Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV níbi wọ́n ti ń dábì ẹ̀dùn tí wọ́n ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV láti ń gbóhùn sáfẹ́fẹ́ láti ń dábì ẹ̀dùn tá ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, ọgbọ́n ń bẹ, òye ń bẹ, ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lóríṣiríṣi ní Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV. Ẹ máa wò ó, ẹ máa gbọ́.
Gbogbo ojú tó ń wò mí káàkiri ayé kò kí wa lọ́kùnrin lóbìnrin lọ́mọdé lágbà nínú ilé yìí mo kí wa pa kú dédé àsìkò yìí àsìkò bójú ọjọ́ ti rí ẹdí odò bí bóun ló ti rí lọ́dọ̀ tí yín ẹ̀kọ́ àárọ̀ ẹ̀ka àsán ẹ̀kúrọ̀lẹ́ ẹ̀ka alẹ́ ẹ wá nǹkan fìdílé tàbí kẹ́ fìdílé nǹkan ara mi rírí o mo rórí ológbò látẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo wá sọ lénìí kò kàn ọ́ wá dé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni kò kàn ọ́ ní mo fẹ́ padà sọ̀rọ̀ Kwara insecurity tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ètò ààbò tó mẹ́ẹ̀ ní Kwara nígbà tí mo jí láàárọ̀ yìí mi lè káyé messages tó wà lórí WhatsApp mi mo máa ń select àwọn kọ̀ọ̀kan according to bó bá ṣe important sí àbí tó ṣe jẹ́ pressing issue sí mo pick bí 12 tó jẹ́ pé subject matter kan náà ni ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo fẹ́ sọ yìí èèyàn bí 12 ló sẹ́ndẹ̀ sí mi ní write up mo dẹ̀ tó rí pé ẹnìkan tó gbé nínú Vanguard newspaper I don't know how true it is but wọ́n post ẹ̀ lórí Facebook tó bá jẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ tó bá dóòtọ́ ni gbogbo ẹ̀yin èèyàn tẹ́ wò mí fẹ́ kẹ́ bá mi investigate.
Once again, I greet us all in the name of Olodumare. I'm the president, I'm Oladimeji Bolarinwa, the president of TYF, Think Yoruba First Organization Worldwide. It is a socio-political, socio-cultural think tank, non-governmental organization that speaks for the entire Yoruba people throughout the world. Today's conversation is extremely important. And today's conversation is highly critical. Today we are going to be doing a juxtaposition between Nigeria and Sudan. What are the similarities between Nigeria and Sudan? What are the likely things that might happen, that happened in Sudan, that is already happening in Nigeria, and where Nigeria is actually headed? Today and tonight's conversation, you can see the way I'm so sober and trying to become cool and collected. There is a reason for this. Because I'm going to be saying a lot of things that I want to beg all Yoruba people listening to me, other Nigerians listening to me, other West Africans listening to me, the citizens of the free world listening to me, not to see me as anti any ethnicity, as anti any religion, as anti any other person. We are just here to speak as a citizen of the world. We are not paid to do this. We've never been paid to do this. It is a call to serve our people, to be the voice in the wilderness in these trying times. When I speak to your conscience, I speak to your heart. And I want you tonight to take this lecture today to be one of the greatest lecture for you to know what is happening in the Sahel. Many of the things many of us know, some of us know. We thought it was common knowledge. But we live in the time of great delusion. We live in the time of great hedonism, where things like sports, music, and other entertainment, just like during the time when the Roman Empire was about to collapse. It's exactly the situation of things in Yoruba land as we speak. So, for any one of you that will be listening to me today, I want you all to be the apostle, to be the gospelers, to be the missionaries that will take this message into powerful places in the world, from Aso Rock to the White House, to government houses, local government secretariats, because this message might save the life of millions and millions of people all around the world, men and women. I'll be comparing Sudan and Nigeria. And I'm going to start very, very basic. Sudan is a country that was colonized by the British. Nigeria was also a country that was under British colonialism and administration. So these two countries fundamentally has two things in common. They were both colonized by Britain. So you have to know that fundamentally. So we are not comparing apples with oranges, and we are not trying to be false alarmists. For the mere fact that the two countries were colonized by Britain under the same colonial administration should actually send a lot of signals to people listening to us. What we're doing is what we call compare and contrast. In basic terms, it's called juxtaposition. So I want us to follow chronologically what we will be saying. Sudan had Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. Nigeria had Northern Nigeria and Southern Nigeria. The North was basically mostly Sunni Muslims, while the South was basically, the Northern Sudan was basically Sunni Muslims, while Southern Sudan was basically mostly Christians and animists. In Northern Sudan, there were other religions there, other ethnicities apart from the Arabs there. In Northern Nigeria, apart from the Fulanis, Hausas, and the Kanuris, there are hundreds of other ethnicities there too. In Southern Sudan, there were also these mostly Christians due to the missionary work of the British and other European missionaries. We also have pockets of Muslims, especially from the Equatorial region in Southern Sudan. Now called South Sudan. You also look at Nigeria. Nigeria is mostly Christian. The bastion is that it has been the cesspool of Western, Judeo-Christian Western civilization. While we also have large pocket of Muslims in the West, in Yoruba land, and in Edo and Delta. So this shows you that it is almost the same configuration. And Northern Sudan has always been a place of different Islamic civilization for centuries before British colonialism. Does this sound familiar? Because we had the Ottoman Empire. After the Ottoman conquest of Sudan, so that area of Sudan, Northern Sudan specifically, was under the Ottoman Islamic Empire. Prior to this, there were also other Islamic empires, like the Funj Caliphate and the Darfur and the Darfuri Caliphate, which was ruled by the Sultan of Darfur. These were all African, Asiatic, Islamic empires. But you also look at Northern Nigeria, You have the Islamic Caliphate of Sokoto and the Kanem Borno Islamic civilization of Borno. So you can see a lot of similarities that the northern Sudan has always had a form of Islamic civilization that has been existing in that place for 600, 700, 800 years. Northern Nigeria has also had a form of Islamic civilization for nearly 600, 700 years. And both that Islamic civilization was Sunni Islamic civilization. While southern Nigeria, before the advent of Europeans, mostly were indigenous African civilization, where the Yoruba civilization, which we call the Oduduwa civilization, or some people call it Ife civilization, was the most powerful along the entire coast of West Africa. And if you look at Sudan, Sudan is the place where the two great rivers, the two mighty rivers of Central and East Africa, meet. And that place is called Khartoum. And I'm talking about the Blue Nile and the White Nile. One of the Nile is coming from Uganda. Another one is coming from Ethiopia. So when you look at these similarities, compared to Nigeria, Nigeria is where the two greatest rivers in West Africa also meet. I'm talking about River Niger and I'm talking about River Benue. And their confluence is at Lokoja. I hope people are following my juxtaposition between Sudan and Nigeria. When the British left, Sudan had its independence in 1956, while Nigeria had its independence in 1960. Northern Nigeria was ruled, and Northern Sudan were ruled separately from Southern Nigeria and Southern Sudan. It was a form of indirect rule. Northern Sudan, its Islamic structure was left intact. While Southern Sudan, the European powers funded missionary work, Christianization of the indigenous pagans in Southern Sudan. The same thing happened in Southern Nigeria. And according to different academic literatures and different academic studies, it is not a lie, it is not a propaganda that there was something called the dual mandates in Nigeria. The same thing, we also had the same thing in Sudan. The dual mandate in Nigeria was the part Anglo-Fulani part, where the Fulanis were co-colonizers within the Nigerian project. The Fulanis were in charge of the north, while they give reports to the British how they ruled the north, while the south was ruled directly by British colonial officers. Let's go further. In northern Sudan, we had what we call the Anglo-Egyptian part, rulership of Sudan. The Egyptians, under the dynasty of Muhammad Ali, the Albanian governor of Egypt, was in charge of Sudan, even though it was still under the control of the British. So it was almost the same pattern, almost the same system. By the time the Arabs, the British left Sudan, they've been able to turn the Arabs, Muslims, as the rulers of Sudan, while Southern Sudan was to be treated as a conquered, third-class, paganistic, infidel axis of that Sudan. The same thing happened in Nigeria. It is no longer news that Ahmadu Bello said that the estate called Nigeria will be treated like the estate of his great-grandfather with Madame Fodio. These are historical facts. And if you read the history of Nigeria from 1940 to 1950, you are surely going to see a lot of conversations as regards to where the core north, Arewa, was demanding for hegemonic political control over the rest of Nigeria. If they do not have total, unfair advantage in terms of political seats, they are never going to be, they will never accept to be part of Nigeria. The same thing happened in Sudan. And Sudan, there was an amalgamation between North Sudan, which was ruled by the Muslims, and South Sudan, which was ruled by the Arab Muslims, and South Sudan, which was majorly dominated by the paganistic, indigenous, Nilotic Africans, who were later Christianized by the Europeans. Let's go further. I hope people can see the similarity. Northern Nigeria is controlled, it's a feudal system controlled by the Fulani power structure, which was a product of the conquest of the core north after the 1804 jihad of Uthman Dan Fodio, a Fulani warlord and cleric. The same thing happened in Sudan. The issue of Sudan, even though there are a lot of similarities, there are deep differences. There are some slight differences. And those slight differences, I'm going to further break it down, which is why I'm going to talk about Sudan a little bit. What exactly is Sudan? I've said this several times. Sudan means the land of the black people. Now, how can a country that used to be the land of black people suddenly become Arab? How did the land of the blacks become the land of the Arabs? How did Arab settlers suddenly become the overwhelming majority of a country that was never theirs 1,000 years ago? What happened? That area called Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, because Sudan was part and parcel of the great Egyptian civilization. And the Arabization of Sudan was finally the destruction of any proof of the greatness of black civilization. What I'm saying tonight, you need to see beyond religion, you need to see beyond hate, you need to see beyond sentiment and pettiness for you to actually understand what we are talking about. The Arabization of Sudan was started in the 14th century, just around 1300 to the 1400s. The Arabization of Sudan did not start before the existence of the Oyo Empire. The Arabization of Sudan did not even start. The Europeans have not, Christopher Columbus have not stepped his feet on the shores of the North American, South American continent before the Arabization of Sudan started. What I'm saying is, in historical terms, the Arabization of Sudan is very, very recent. That's just what I'm saying. When the Rashidun Islamic Caliphate of the Arabs conquered much of North Africa, where they defeated the Byzantine Roman Empire in the 6th, 7th AD. What happened? They tried to go inward to conquer the rest, to attack the Kushite kingdom. But they were soundly defeated. The people of Kush were one of the few nations on earth that defeated the Arab expansionism after the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we need to understand how powerful the black civilization was. So the Nubian kingdom defeated the Rashidun Caliphate in 600, 700 AD. And for another 700, 800 years, that area that is called Sudan today, Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, were powerful Christian kingdoms. I'm talking about Christianity that has existed since the days of, that Christianity will have been even before Western Christianity started. They were powerful Christian kingdoms. But what happened? By the mid-millennium, I'm talking about between the 13th, 14th, 15th century, the Arab, after 600 years of stoppage, after the Arabs took over Egypt, there was a slight peace. But gradually, Arabs continued to come in as traders. They continue to come in as herdsmen. Am I making sense? They continue to come in as nomadic people. They started settling down. And they started intermarrying with different tribes. One of the tribes that actually gave them access into Sudan was the tribe called the Beja tribe. The Beja tribe were the people that actually, they also accepted Islam, and all of a sudden gave the Arab settlers land, and they started intermarrying heavily with them. Marriage, politics, power, economy has been one of the most powerful tools of colonialism and expansionism anywhere in the world. Like I said tonight, I am speaking to Yoruba sons and daughters. I'm not speaking to you for you to become very aggressive. I'm speaking so that you can have these pills of wisdom to be able to fight during these trying times. The world is back in the days of conquests. The world is back in the days of empire. There is nothing called international rule of law anymore. It has been broken apart. We see what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. We've seen what is happening in Palestine, between Israel and Palestine. We are in the days of the wide west all over the world. The world powers, everybody is trying to survive. That is why you see white nationalism are also trying to survive, and we can see that there is a resurgence in puritanical Arab expansionism clothed in Islam, political Islamism all over the world. And we can see even in Asia, the Asians are so lucky. They've been able to secure their borders. they've been able to secure their identity, and they stand a chance to survive what is going to happen. The most chaotic places that's going to be on the surface of the earth is going to be Western Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Because those places, demography is changing. There are pervasive and conflicting ideology between those places. And Africa, which is full of human resources, mineral resources, anybody who secures it has secured a lifetime of greatness for their coming generation. So there's a lot of things to fight for and grab in Africa. The countries we have in Africa, even though they say they are sovereign, there's no sovereign country in Africa. Every single country in Africa was made in Berlin. Our foreign affairs is not ours. This is the bitter truth. But as usual, we love to deceive ourselves. We love to preach ideologies that does not exist anywhere in the world. I am sorry to say this. An average black man in Africa does not have the wisdom and understanding to survive this century. That is why some of us have dedicated our whole life to maybe our race, the Yoruba people, can survive. It's a matter of maybe. It is not guaranteed. Our survival it's in the hands of God. So the Arabization of Sudan took place by these nomadic Arab settlers in different waves and intermarrying with the local populace and some other indigenous ethnicities. After they became Arabized, they could not differentiate between Arabization and Islamization. Many of them, they adopted Arab as their mother tongue, and they stopped speaking their indigenous languages. And they became Arabs, they became Arabized. For people like the Funch Caliphate and the Darfuris, who refused to give up their identity, who refused to become Arabized, even though they say, oh, we become Muslims, we're no longer Christians, we become Muslims. That still did not spare them. When Egypt, under the Ottoman Turks with the support of the British, invaded Egypt invaded Sudan, rather, because of three things. One, to get black slaves, because the Ottoman Empire was built on the use of slave soldiers as a tool of expansionism. After Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated in Egypt, the Ottoman Empire knew they needed more slave soldiers. The European Janissaries were no longer trusted. The Janissaries were Christian children that were enslaved and stolen from their families, that were turned into elite Ottoman Empire, and they were used to fight for the expansionism and the expansion and glory of the Ottoman Empire for more than 500 years. So tens of thousands of black people were taken as slaves to be used as soldiers. The Ottomans have seen the Arabs done it. The use of black people as slave soldiers. They've seen it done in Oman, in Zanzibar. So why can't they do the same thing also in Egypt? Essentially to be used to crush revolts in Greece and other places in the Balkans that were trying to get their independence from the Ottoman Empire. So they also wanted more land for agriculture and also for the total Arabization of that place, especially the destruction of the Funch Caliphate and the Darfur Caliphate, which were ruled by black people who were not speaking Arabic. And they knew how important even the pharaohs, the great pharaohs, Greeks, Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire could not conquer that area of Africa where the two great rivers met, the Blue Nile and the Nile and the White Nile. And they needed that land a lot for agriculture in order to be able to produce large cash crops, in order to be able to sustain the Ottoman Empire, and food crops in order to be able to expand the empire. It was also during this period that the British and other European societies were experiencing large industrialization. So they needed cash crops like cotton. And it was during this period that Britain lost its crown colony. The crown colony of Britain was United States of America. So Britain was looking for solutions, cottons that was going to supplement, that was going to continue to give raw materials for the looms, industrial machine looms of Great Britain. And they saw one in Sudan. Many of the enslaved black people in Sudan were used in order to produce millions of tons of cotton that was exported from the Ottoman Empire to Britain. That is why we had the issue of a dual mandate of the colonization of Sudan before the 1952 revolution that overthrew the dynasty of Muhammad Ali. Now, I'm still talking about Sudan. And now there emerged a particular, so at this particular period of time, the black people, one way or the other, still had a form of political freedom. Even though there have been fighting about land, others farmers' crisis. A good example was in Abyei, where nomadic Arabized herdsmen were fighting over land with indigenous Dinkas. And in that 18th century, just like Afoja in Ilorin, the indigenous Dinka chief gave land and said, "Oh, you Arabs can be settling down and be giving your seed and be using that land to graze your cattle. We are all brothers. We are all brothers in Islam. Are we not also intermarrying?" When in 2011, 250 years later, almost over 250 years later, when the Dinkas, who are now majorly in South Sudan, wanted to get their independence from South Sudan, the Arabs stood up and said that land belongs to them, that they will not allow Abyei to be part of South Sudan. You know why? Oil and gas in huge commercial quantities had been discovered in that area. So the people they gave land, settlers, visitors, said they would never allow Abyei, that huge, rich territory, to be part of South Sudan. Brothers and sisters, Abyei was never allowed to be part of South Sudan, despite all the tears and agony of the Dinkas. The oil and gas that Sudan claims to own now is coming from the land they stole by people who welcomed them with open arms. By the late 19th century, There was a man called Muhammad Ahmad who called himself the Messiah, Mahdi, that he has come to liberate all the Muslims in Sudan. Now, Mahdi calls himself an Arab from the descendants of Prophet Muhammad. Even though historical literature says he was an Arabized Nubian. Now, Sudan, the Nubian kingdoms did not fall through war. The Nubian kingdoms fell through three things. The Nubian kingdoms did not fall through conventional war, which is not Sudan proper. The Nubian kingdom fell due to asymmetrical warfare, non-stop war of attrition by the Arab settlers, destroying their farms, displacing population, importing their people all the way from the Arabian Peninsula by trying to intermarry with the indigenous people, weaponizing Islam for their own political goal. If you do not have Islamic names, you are never going to get access to jobs. So a lot of people petitioned their indigenous identity and they started embracing other identity in order to be able to have economic privileges. Is the same thing not happening in Nigeria? They don't want us to talk about this because they know a lot of you are weak. A lot of you are afraid, and I cannot blame many of us because the different military juntas that came into Nigeria killed a lot of dissidents. That is why no matter how terrible no matter how terrible politicians are, you can blame APC, you can blame PDP, you can curse them. They are still far, 3 billion times better than the military boys. Because the military structure of Nigeria, don't be fooled. You are seeing Oloyede Lagbaja, chief of army staff. The Nigerian military structure as still now, it is still within the hands of the Fulani hegemony in the core north. It's a bitter truth. That's why you see them already planning coup against Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. If you are naive within Nigeria, you are going to destroy yourself. And most ethnicities are not naive. The only naive people that we pray do not become the cannon fodder and they are going to be destroyed within Nigeria are my Yoruba people. That is why I'm speaking, I am sweating, I am crying. I come here every week. We come here every weekend to preach and shout in the wilderness. Nobody's going to stop us from speaking these truths because we are not mad. Everything we're saying is coming to pass. Open your eyes, you are going to see. So going back to Sudan, a man came, Muhammad Ahmad. He started what we call the Mahdist revolution. And he used pan-Islamism. Pan-Islamism, religious brotherhood and trauma bonding. Religious brotherhood and trauma bonding in order to unite the different disparate ethnicities in the north and the south to say, let us expel the Ottoman Empire. Egypt should not be ruling us. So that thing called Sudan, the post-colonial borders of Sudan, it was the Egypt Ottoman invasion led by the governor, the Pasha of Egypt, in the person of Muhammad Ali, that created those borders. What the Arabs could not achieve for 1,000 years, for close to 900 years, what the Roman Empire could not achieve achieve in 2,000 years what Alexander the Great could not achieve 3,000 years ago. The Ottoman Empire achieved it by creating that Sudan, by taking over those two great rivers where they marched, which was in Khartoum. So the Arabs, because the Ottoman Empire, this was when Arab nationalism started. Arab nationalism was already starting all over the Arab world. And a lot of Arabs have started asking questions. Why are the Ottoman Muslims ruling we Arab Muslims? They are not as populous as us. In fact, we gave them Islam. So why are we their slaves? Why have they become the number one and we've become third class within the hierarchy of power within the Islamic world? There were different rebellions against the Ottoman Turks in places like Algeria. So that was even why the Ottoman Turks handed over the Arab Muslims over to the French to be finally destroyed. So when Muhammad Ahmad started the Mahdist revolution, and he was able to weaponize pan-Islamism for his own Arab agenda, which they call the Mahdist revolution. The same pattern, that was where, and this issue of pan-Islamism, this issue of pan-Islamism was actually used for expansionism by certain ethnicities for their own political agenda in different places. The three major ethnicities that I can give examples of that have actually been able to use political Islam for their own ethnic agenda for the past 1,000 years are the Arabs, the Fulanis, and the Turks. When they want to gain public sympathy, they start talking about humanity first, patriotism, just like you see them since Buhari have left power and they've become uneasy for the past 2 years. They've been going about preaching the beauty and oneness of Nigeria. And when they want to subjugate, suppress minority groups like Christians, traditionalists, animists, living within their political jurisdiction, within the country, Nigeria, they start using terms like, oh, these people are infidels. These people are ane. They start talking about blasphemy laws, apostasy. They become monsters. But when they start talking about Nigeria, they start talking in sweet terms. Let us all come together for one Nigeria. They've mastered the art of double speaking. They lie as if they are the second, they are the half brother of Shaitan. When it comes to their political agenda. And they've done this technique over and over and over again in several places across the world, and it has worked. Especially when they know that the black man becomes irrational when it comes to issue of metaphysics and religion. That is why we need to go through this intellectual conversation so that we are not going to be brute, we are not going to be crude, we are going to understand what we are discussing. So Muhammad Ahmad was able to, the only person that looks like Muhammad Ahmad within the Nigerian context was Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio, who was able to use pan-Islamism to be able to change, to orchestrate a revolution. So there was Dan Fodio revolution in 1904 in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria, and there was Mahdi revolution between 1880s in Sudan. Even though with the help of the British, this revolution was pushed back. This and Uthman and the leader of the Mahdi revolution died through typhus. Just the way the British were also responsible for the crushing of the products of the revolution of Dan Fodio by the destruction and of the Sokoto Caliphate by the early 1900s. So these are realities, historical parallels. Yet, the British still saw the Arabs as superior to the black people that they Christianized in Sudan, just the way the British saw the Fulanis to be superior to the black people they Christianized in Sudan. I'm not blaming the British. We are having an historical conversation. And this is not for you to hate the British. Why should you hate? You need to understand colonialism, just the way the Irish understood their history, the Scots understand their history, the Welsh understand their history. The greatest disservice that has happened to the black people is the inability for them to properly understand their history. Apart from having skills that will put food on your table, the most important knowledge every black man should have is the knowledge of their history. The Indians have a basic knowledge of their history. The Chinese have the basic knowledge of their history. The Malays have the basic knowledge of their history. A Japanese child of 6, 7, 8, 10 years has a basic understanding of their history. But all over the world, if you ever see any black man, most of them have zero understanding of their history. But what do we know best? We understand Islam. We understand Christianity. We understand music. We understand materialism. We have sold our soul instead of selling our soul to wisdom and understand who we are and why we are at the bottom of the food chain within the hierarchy of things in the world. We have sold our soul to hedonism, chronic materialism. If it is not prosperity gospel in churches, it is money at all costs in mosques. The society has become so materialistic. You are going to be hearing songs like, if you don't get money, if you don't get money, hide your face. We've glorified criminality. We've glorified corruption. We've glorified nonentity, mediocrity. And what happened? People that are ideologically strong are going to destroy us. So if you go to Sudan today, the tomb where Muhammad Ahmad, the leader of the Mahdi revolution, where he was buried, he is seen as a national hero. He is seen as the spiritual father of the Islamic State of Sudan. It's a symbol of conquest. It's a symbol of revolution. The same thing with Uthman Dan Fodio is seen as the spiritual father of what, quote unquote, Arewa. So this is where, if you look at both of them are products of revolution in the real sense of it. concept of Nigeria to an average Hausa, Fulani, or Kanuri is based on the Uthman Dan Fodio jihad. They draw their concept of Nigerianness from that revolution. The concept of Sudanese nationalism also is derived from the concept of the Mahdi revolution by Muhammad Ahmad. So it is the same. Ultra-Sunni jihadist puritanical movements. That is why it is normal for Islamist, political Islamist organizations to be springing up like pure water in the core north and in Sudan. So there was northern Nigeria, there was northern Sudan, there was southern Nigeria, there was northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria, and there was northern Sudan and southern Sudan. And it was the British that amalgamated these disparate people for their own political agenda. Now, many people have said the reason why the British amalgamated the Connaughts, Arewa, with the rest of us was because of, they did not have money in order to be able to manage their colonies, because the North is an economic deadweight on the rest of Nigeria. Now, what was the reason why they did the one in Sudan? By 1956, that was like some years after the Second World War. So why did you've seen what has happened in Pakistan, in India, where the Hindus have literally separated themselves from the Muslims. It has failed. The experiment has failed. Why did you do the same thing in Sudan and now you've seen the tensions in Nigeria. Now, why did you go ahead and amalgamate South Sudan and North Sudan in 1956? While making sure that power was in the hands of the radical North. So there has been this disdain. There has been this racism. There has been this arrogance that Northern Sudan used to look at Southern Sudan. The Northern Sudanese saw Southern Sudanese as inferior. Northern Sudan had this ideology that they are born to rule, that they are born to dominate, they are born to rule. That was how they looked down on Southern Sudan. The same thing we have in Nigeria, where some people believe that it is wrong for an infidel to be ruling the Federal Capital Territory. There are some things that we need to have a conversation about. We really thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for what he's doing. But unfortunately, a lot of our youth, not just amongst the Yoruba people, amongst other ethnicities, do not understand the ideological premises in many of the things President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing. They don't understand it. He asked your dad. Jonathan could not do it. OBJ could not try it. But Tinubu brought a Christian, a minority, to become the minister of the Federal Capital Territory in a place they call Irewolede. They've not forgiven him for it. And they are looking for all ways to teach him a lesson. I hope we've been able to, at least, I've been able to juxtapose. And Northern Sudan is a product of conquest. Northern Sudan was created by the colonialism and the invasion, subjugation, enslavement of the indigenous black Nubian people. That was how Northern Sudan was done. So what you have in Northern Sudan is Arabization. The indigenous people were conquered in the 13th, 14th, 16th century, between the 13th century to the 20th century. Between 700 years, the Arab Sudanese became majority in Sudan, in northern Sudan. Now, what do you have in Nigeria? Northern Nigeria is also a product of conquest. So what you have in northern Nigeria is Fulanization, and they work and they use where they need to use Islamic Brotherhood, they deploy it. Where they need to use Fulani supremacy, they deploy it. To the extent that we've seen certain Yoruba people, young people, who actually do not understand what they are talking about, and they start talking like as if something is mentally wrong with them. They cannot separate between Arabization, Fulanization from the religion of Islam. But when the Arabs wanted to break the yoke of Ottomanism, because one of the reasons why Ottoman Empire lost the First World War was this. Maybe we have to go into that reason. It was because the English, the Allies' power, the English and the French, were able to tap into Arab nationalism. So when the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan of the Ottomans at Istanbul, declared an holy war. Oh, all Muslims of the world, let us come together and fight against the infidels. The Arabs told him, we are Arab first. We are not going to fight your battles. That was where places like places like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, those are where those dynasties were formed. Iraq, Syria. Because these warlords were turned into kings. Because they supported the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, which was a threat to the safety and stability and greatness of Western Europe. You can see what they did to Al-Jolani. Al-Jolani is an Arab supremacist, religious extremist, but he's being pampered even in the White House. Why? Because he was the tool that was used to destroy the powerful and great Assad dynasty. So he's being used as a poster boy to other warlords and militias in that area of the Middle East, that if you really play along with us, we will make you powerful. Look at how we've turned what we did in Kuwait. Look at what we did in Saudi Arabia. Look at what we've done in UAE. Look at what we've done with Bahrain. These people were never kings. It was the Europeans that turned these warlords into kings and emirs. For their part and the role they played in the destruction of the Ottoman Empire. Now, I'm not here to glorify the Ottoman Empire, but I'm telling you the politics, the geopolitics that has happened for the past 100 years. That's 110 years. So, northern Nigeria is a product of conquest of the an alien Fulani race coming to using the political tool of Islam to subjugate the indigenous Hausa people. Another indigenous people in that northern Nigeria. Northern Sudan was a product of conquest where Arabs came in using war, violence, and the tool and using political Islam to conquer indigenous Nubian people. So you can see the similarity. Now, the next part that we actually need to talk about, because I've not actually dealt with the post-colonial intricacies that happened in Sudan. Now, Sudan, Nigeria is a slow motion of Sudan. If we did not have powerful leaders in Yoruba land, the Yoruba people had been the factor that has actually impeded Nigeria from quickly escalating into another British India and another post-British Sudan. We are the ones that have stopped it. But unfortunately, because these people they don't know where to stop. They are bringing the chaos. If you destroy Yoruba land, that is the end of Nigeria. As we know it, all intolerant, radical ethnicities within Nigeria have started exporting what has turned their places into dead economic zones, and they are already transporting it into the southwest. And we're already seeing some Yoruba youth adopting this destructive, nihilistic ideology. If it is not political Christianity, it is political Islam. If it is not that, it is the far left, far right, neoliberal leftist movement. All sort of nonsense is in the southwest. And a lot of our political elites are they are not even aware. They're so detached from the people. They just want the best cars, the best airport. They don't, the what actually keeps Yoruba land safe for them, they are not interested in it. And to them, democracy is the 4 years rituals, that they do. That is what they think about. They are so happy, we will mobilize for election. They will be given politics. They will become youth leader. They will become SSA. That is all what they are for. And they are going to keep their families abroad. They will travel abroad, and some people will be licking us. Oh, yes, they will be doing all sorts of things so that people will notice them.
Gbàgede ìmọ̀ TV.